Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is October 11th, 2023. For those of you calling in for the first time, I hope you will click the subscribe button if the things we discuss here are of interest, and share our calls with other like-minded individuals. This is going to be a short call for a number of reasons, one of which, of course, is what's going on in the Middle East right now. And I've been inundated with calls and texts asking me if, in fact, what's going on in the Middle East is going to affect the situation in Iraq and the change in the exchange rate. In my opinion, I don't think so at this point, but I'm going to get into it in a little bit more detail. Because this is a shorter call, for those of you calling in for the first time, I suggest you go back to our calls of October 4th and even September 27th. They're longer calls, and they get into a little bit more of an explanation of the trust package that we have. Again, I'm not going to get into that today. There's a lot going on in Iraq. There's a lot going on in the Middle East. There's a lot going on internationally, and I'm involved in that, along with the number of individuals that have contacted us for trust packages or for changes to their trust package. So we're just extremely busy right now, and there just isn't time to market the trust to prospects. Although if you are interested there, you can contact us, and we'll be happy to send you our initial package. The first thing I'd like to discuss, actually by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves. We're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, the things of most interest, of course, are the window for the potential reinstitution of the dinar. I still maintain, despite everything that's happening, that the dinar could reinstitute at any time, although there are some things going on in Iraq right now that could postpone the reinstitution. Given the law that goes into effect on January 1st of 2024, I don't see how the nation-state of Iraq could even function without their own new national currency by January of 2024. Just the math isn't there, and I'm going to get into that as well. With regard to Iraq, it's a classic situation that we've all been dealing with: 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And because of that, there's a couple of things going on. The World Trade Organization, the membership for Iraq is still pending, but I think there's been a little bit of a lull right there given what's going on right now in Iraq, which I do believe is temporary. There's also an issue with the HCL. The Kurds are once again making some 11th hour demands or disputes, which is classic Middle Eastern tactic. There's no such thing as a drop-dead date. All a drop-dead date is in the Middle East is a date for renegotiation. So while it's disappointing, it's not surprising. What we're dealing with in Iraq right now is a monetary reform stalemate. We have international agencies that are basically saying, please change your exchange rate. It's long overdue. However, there are some complications in Iraq having to do with corruption, having to do with their attempt to continue to collect the 3-0 provisional currency. So, as I've said for weeks, Iraq does not have sufficient USD reserve currencies to fund a 3-year budget and all of the international contracts for the rebuilding of their infrastructure. Therefore, these contracts have been consummated based on an internal exchange rate, a rate that they believe the dinar will reach in order to fund these contracts. But because of the delays, rather than use their reserve currencies, which Iraq needs to support its currency, they go to the United States Federal Reserve Bank for loans. They got a loan in September for $1 billion. They wanted another loan for $1 billion for October. They were denied that loan. So everyone's getting very frustrated and impatient with Iraq, and I think they're doing the best that they can. And part of the problem, unfortunately, is the banking system. As a matter of fact, the banks basically have instituted a run on the banks by saying that individuals cannot withdraw the USD that they've got in the banks. However, the reason for this, in my opinion, is they're transitioning or going to transition to a digital currency, and they want to remove the hard currency. In addition, and because of the corruption that seems to just be nonstop in Iraq, excuse me, it seems that some of the banks are involved in sort of a black market arbitrage, where on the one hand, they are selling U.S. dollars on the black market at 15.20 IQD, and then they're purchasing U.S. dollars from the central bank at 11.32. So that 400 dinar spread, of course, is profit to them. As a result, Sudani is fining banks and even closing them. So this is all creating to the problem in Iraq. As a result, as we speak, they're technically not Article 8 compliant with the IMF. They're not meeting international standards. So this is an unfortunate turn. Again, as I said before, it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. However, in my opinion, this is a minor glitch. It will be resolved. The government of Iraq is going to either have to spend down their USD reserves, since they cannot borrow money, or they're going to need to change their exchange rate and adopt their new national currency. And as I've said in the past, they've painted themselves in a corner. They cannot continue to function in this state of limbo. So while the news this week is not good, certainly the worst-case scenario at this point, and I mean the worst-case scenario, would be the establishment of a new national currency in January, because they've outlawed the use of their dollar, meaning the government can't even use the dollar. It's just the reserve currency to be used for international purposes. It cannot be used in country. So that seems to be the drop-dead date. So for those of us that have been involved in this for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, another couple of months is frustrating. It's annoying, but this is going to happen. Iraq's going to have its own currency for the simple reason that they can't function at this point without it. So that's where we are today. Again, for those of you calling in for the first time, I strongly suggest you go to our call of October 4th or September 27th. We have received a large number of trust applications, a large number of phone calls and emails. I know it's frustrating because when you've made the decision to pull the trigger and do this, you want it done right away. We're moving as quickly as we can. As soon as I'm off of this call, I'm going to be making calls, answering emails, making sure trusts are submitted to our paralegals for preparation and delivery immediately. Before I go off, I just want to touch on what's going on in the Middle East again. I do not think what's going on is going to affect the reinstitution revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, but I do think it's going to have an effect on the Middle East, and I don't think things are ever going to be the same. I'm going to make a comment here, and everything I say from this point forward, I'm going to touch on a little bit of history, but it's pretty much my opinion. I think what we're witnessing in the Middle East is the establishment of the Fourth Reich. That's a very ugly possibility, but I want to just touch on the history where all this began. We're all familiar with the term the Third Reich during the Second World War, but a lot of people don't give that thought. Say, well, the Third Reich, well, you know, what happened? What's the First Reich? What's the Second Reich? We're going back in history. The First Reich was established after several centuries after the fall of the Roman Empire, which was basically destroyed by the German hordes that overran it. And the First Reich is referred to actually as the Holy Roman Empire, established in Germany, and it existed for 900 years. The Second Reich was basically the formal reunification of Germany, which was established in 1871 and existed until the First World War in 1918. Between the First World War and the Second World War, there was an alliance between the Grand Mufti of the Middle East and Persia and Germany, Nazi Germany. And that's when Iran became Iran, because for thousands of years before that, Iran was known as Persia. But they changed the name to Iran. Iran is Persian, Farsi, the language of Farsi, for Aryan. So Iranians are Aryans. And of course, the Third Reich, which was established in 1933, was the German Aryan nation. They were profoundly anti-Semitic, and that's why I refer to Iran, which is a profoundly anti-Semitic country, as the Fourth Reich, because they state as their objective the extermination not only of the state of Israel, but of the Jewish people. And we've witnessed what they're willing to do over the last few days. The only reason I mention this is it's good to understand this history, to understand what's happening. But despite the barbarity that's involved here, and despite, unfortunately, I think, a war that's emanating certainly in that region and what's going to be happening in the Gaza Strip over what's occurred in Israel, I do not think it's going to have an effect on the currencies and the revaluation. It's unfortunate that we even mentioned the two things in one breath, but the purpose of our calls and what we're doing and what we've been involved in is, of course, the fact that we have been investors, speculators, if you want to call us that, in the Iraqi dinar, and we have patiently, over decades, some of us, watched the nation develop to the point where their currency can revalue and where we can receive the profit, well-deserved profit for the time and patience and money that we've invested into the nation. But we can also at the same time be very saddened about what's going on in the Middle East and the barbarity that we have witnessed. Ironically, I, along with my family, had planned a trip to Israel this month. I myself backed out of the deal because when we proceeded with this thing, I found out I had to be vaccinated in order to go. I don't want to get into my personal health history. I'm not anti-vax, but I'm anti-COVID vax. So I just said to members of my family that I wasn't going to be going because I wasn't going to be vaccinated. And since all of this has occurred, they're not only not going, but they're running into problems getting reimbursed, for the money that they spent, for the trip. And, of course, that's minor. That's nothing compared to, the suffering that's going on. My only point being it's kind of odd that on the one hand we're on this call talking about the revaluation of currency so that we can make a profit at the very same time that the Middle East is in such strife. And we also have to remember that where is Iraq located? Between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. So, that's a little bit of a scary proposition as well. But hopefully, God willing, this thing can come to an end with as little suffering as possible. And, from our narrow point of view, hopefully Iraq will resolve this little logjam that it's got in the banking system, and that we will be in the banks doing our exchanges no later than January. And in as much as we're in mid-October right now, we're not talking about a lot of time. So we ought to be thankful that we're not in a situation in the Middle East. We can celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas with our families, and somewhere along the line between now and then, go to the banks and find ourselves in a very good position financially. So thanks so much for listening to this call. I'm sorry it's been a little bit of a diversionary call, but with things going on in the world, particularly in the Middle East, it's not something that we can ignore. Lastly, I do not think that what's going on is going to affect at least so far, what's going on in Iraq and the process and progress being made with the reinstitution of the currency. So thanks so much for listening to this call. We will have a call next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature happens, we will try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. God bless. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and let's hope we see peace in the Middle East. Bye-bye.